KDKA. This is Cars, Stars, and Everything in Between. He is the star, Richard Bazzi, Schultz Ford, SchultzFord.com. I am Bubba from 100.7 Star Radio. And on with us today, and I know we're going to have this amazing, interesting conversation, Pauline Brown. Welcome to Car Stars and Everything in Between, and to steal a line from Richard Bazzi, I don't even know where we are going to start with this conversation because there is so much to talk about with who you are and what you do. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bubba. Great to be on the show. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I think the pleasure is really ours.
Absolutely.
As I read through, I really don't know where to start because there's so many topics from the intelligence part, from the Neiman Marcus part, it just all seems to me, Pauline, that it all ties back to one theme, and that's experiential and knowing how to teach what might be to most or to some the obvious that we fail at.
Well, we don't have to teach anyone what they like and what they don't like, right? That comes pretty naturally.
Right.
What I do teach today, and it really started organically in the boardroom and in the managerial ranks, is I teach students, how do you create things? How do you market things? How do you present things that elicit that form of delight and desire that is what we all respond to? And I think it's been a real failure of marketing professors and programs throughout recent history that it has been taught more as a matter of data analytics and, you know, what we can do with digital marketing and so forth. And we really haven't gone nearly far enough in understanding the human piece, which is what I teach today.
And if you don't mind me interjecting very quickly, that has always been, because I consider myself a pretty good marketer, especially with radio and my businesses. But that's the one thing that I feel like all the time is like, aren't we really selling emotion? In the end, no matter what, aren't we selling emotion? And how do digital analytics sell emotion?
Yeah, no, you're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, about 90% depends on the sector, but for the most part, about 90% of why we buy any given product, any given brand, is how it makes us feel. At every price point, for every type of functionality I could talk about, there will be many options. And the option that we vie for at that price point and with that functionality is the one that makes us feel the way we want to feel. And it's, you know, look, we do it in real life. It's who we're friends with. It's who we follow on Instagram. But again, when it comes to branding and marketing, I think we are in the first inning of what can be done. And that's where I see a big opportunity.
I agree with that 100%. We also have a Lincoln dealership.
Yes.
And have you done anything with the automotive space?
I have. I actually worked as an advisor to Ford. So you'll be familiar with some of the people I've interacted with, but it was, you know, at their HQ in Michigan, but I worked with Ford, and then more recently with Mercedes and with BMW. I've been in discussions with Genesis, which is a up and coming division of Hyundai.
Right.
It has all been a completely eye-opening for me because the automotive world is quite different than the luxury world I come from. Even the luxury segment of automotive is quite different.
It is, but I think that's the problem.
That's well said.
I think that really it shouldn't be looked at differently.
No. I mean, historically, even at the high end of the automotive market, it was all about the engineering. You know, can we go faster? Can we, you know,
100%.
And I think that's a piece of the aesthetics, which is what I talk about, the piece of aesthetics about how a pedal feels when you press on it, or how the leather of the seat feels against your body as you're sitting in it. But a big piece of it, I mean, even the color codes of most cars, I think, are so uninspired relative to what is required in fashion and other design-driven sectors. You're absolutely right, Richard.
And I just think that, and I judge a lot by myself and what motivates me to make a buying choice or what makes me feel good. And there's a gap between the technology and the customer. And what fills that bridge? What fills that bridge? It's the experience.
It's the experience. I mean, and one of the things that I've been pushing in the automotive clients that I've had over the years, they've resisted, but maybe you'll have something to say about this, is that it can't just be about your advertising or your car design. It has to be
Yeah.
about working with the dealers to create experiences when people go in that shop. And
Yes.
they invest like de minimis in that piece of the equation. And you know, if you're going to pay 3x for a Lincoln, what you might pay for a entry level Toyota, you know, that experience in the dealership should be markedly different. And today, for the most part, it's not.
I agree with that. It really does drive me crazy because I think we get it at Lincoln now. The president of Lincoln is a lady named Diane Craig, and I
Mm.
don't know if you've interacted with her or not,
No, I have not.
but she's really in tune with all this. She created Sense even for the
Mm,
interior of the car
mm.
to create that. And I'm actually going to talk to her about you because I really think that we could benefit even further from a relationship with you because everything I read about you is everything that we want to be.
Yes.
And I look at your background and it just blows me away.
Oh, thank you.
What from the Louis Vuitton. I mean, what made Louis Vuitton so successful? I mean,
Right. Look, I always say it comes down to two things. One of which you've been talking about, which is experiential design. The other, which we haven't gotten to yet, is about storytelling. I mean, the story of Louis Vuitton is really the story of let's call it mid 19th century Parisian history, the first wave of global travel, when you had the steamship that allowed people for the first time in human history to go far-flung places for no other reason than leisure, right?
right,
So if you think of historically when people traveled, it was either they were like Christopher Columbus, they were discovering new parts of the world on a mission, they were warriors like the Vikings who were going to conquer new lands, and maybe the smallest set is you were a merchant, you know, in the British East Indies looking to trade. So, but nobody traveled just to see parts of the world or to meet new people. And when the steamship came about in the really the mid 1800s, it was revolutionary. And it started with the royalty of Europe sort of going to see the czars and czarinas and the coronations of the kings. And then, of course, filtered down to more of a wealthy class. And eventually today, you know, everybody travels. It's a very accessible form of luxury. The point being that to this day, even though we're talking now almost 200 years later, the Louis Vuitton brand is still built on the story and I'd say the allure of global travel, the adventure, sort of through the lens of this European aristocrat, but still discovering new parts of the world. And that was the trunk. That is why the trunk is such a strong code for the brand.
that's a
Wow.
great story. I didn't know that.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I didn't know
Well,
that either.
and every great brand, I mean, I could say the same of Hermes, I could say the same of Cartier. Every great brand is built on stories that become over time mythical. And my question for you, you know, when you put your Lincoln hat on, is what is the story of Lincoln? I kind of know the story of Henry Ford, although it's a mixed bag. You know, there's some
Right.
very heroic things and there's some very, very questionable things in his history. But certainly you can't take away the fact that he was a revolutionary when it comes to the industry. I have no idea why Lincoln was created, by whom it was created, and what initially opened the way for it to become a huge contender in the luxury market. And to this day, it still lasts, I think, on great design and great engineering. But the other, I would say, the final mile, which will really take this premium pricing home, is, you know, what does it do to trigger the imagination? Where's the romance in this Lincoln car?
By the way, we're
Wow.
just talking to
We're
Pauline
gonna
Brown.
toss that to Diane Craig. I love
And,
it.
and when we come back, more with Pauline Brown on Car Stars and everything in between.
You're pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. And I'm sorry, Bub, I neglected to look when the 9-minute was
Oh
coming
no,
up.
you're fine. You're fine. You're fine.
What other dealerships do you have, Richard? I know you said Lincoln and I'm assuming other Ford.
I have four other Ford
Uh-huh.
plus Lincoln.
Okay, good. And they're all in the South?
No, they're all in the Pittsburgh Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania metro area.
Okay. Okay. Great. Great. Thriving
And
area.
where are you? Where you?
I'm in New York. I'm in the city in Manhattan.
Okay. Love it there. Do you have a favorite restaurant?
Ooh, lots. um, let's see. Have you been to Scarpetto when you come up?
I haven't.
Yeah.
Daniel is my favorite.
Daniel Boulud. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, he's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
He just opened a new steakhouse, so
I saw that. Yeah, I
you'll
saw
have to
that.
come visit.
I do. I love it there. I really do. And it's
And
always so exciting this time of year.
this is a good time of year.
Yeah, it really is.
All right, here, this will be part 2, final 9-minute segment. Here we go. 100.1 FM, AM 1020 KDK. This is Cars, Stars, and everything in between. He's the star, Richard Bazzi, Schultz Ford, schultzford.com. I'm Bubba from 100.7 Star. And our star today, if you know or you love luxury, Pauline Brown is joining us. And when we last left the conversation, Richard, we were talking about the Lincoln brand and the backstory behind it, which I find an interesting topic, since you also have Schultz Lincoln.
I'm going to have to really try to define and hone in on that because I can't answer it, and I'm embarrassed that I can't. So what does define Lincoln? I mean, other than we see a great product, great engineering, we see all that, but the backstory. I really want to dig into that, and I'm going to ask Diane Craig to respond to that. And I'm going to actually introduce Pauline to her. But
Oh, thank
Pauline, I have a question. When I look at everything you've done and everything that you represent, were you part of Louis Vuitton that hired and created the Virgil Abloh piece of it?
So directly, no, but I was part of this wave while I was there that was looking to take European luxury in the most sort of old-fashioned, traditional sense of the term into this new century. And there were a lot of considerations. Virgil and I would say the streetwear movement when it came to fashion is a big one. But even if you look right now at what LVMH, not just Louis Vuitton, but all its sister brands are doing in the sports arena. The company just signed a big sponsorship of F1. They were very prominent sponsors of the last Olympics in Paris. One of the sons of Bernard Arnault, who is the CEO of the company, is in discussions to start a new Parisian soccer team. I think what they are, and I'm no longer in the company, so I'm only observing at this stage, but what they are grappling with, which is not a new challenge, is how do you combine or balance the heritage, the deep, deep heritage of a brand, even brands like a Dom Perignon that goes back to the 1600s, with with modernity and with a culture that is, moving very forward into this future. And if you go too far into the future, you will lose that which makes you special and scarce and intriguing. But if you don't go far enough into the future, you feel like a museum piece. You're a relic. And so that balance is something that the company has been grappling with for a long time. And I think Virgil Abloh was a really important symbol of taking that Louis Vuitton brand into the present.
Yeah, I
Pauline,
agree with that. And that's so well said because you're really transitioning the entire brand.
Yes,
And
yes.
it's almost like you alluded to the steamship. It's a different time, but pretty much similar circumstance.
Right. So the idea of travel, if you go back to that, is as relevant today as it was in the 1800s. How
Yes.
we travel is so different, and who travels is so different. The idea of Virgil or of any of the sports stars that they align themselves with, the idea of that hero worship is not new. We did it with the gladiators, thousands of years ago. But the who we idolize and for what, that is what has changed. And so that is what I would say any strong brand, I mean, Nike is grappling with this all the time. They have been riding on Michael Jordan for a couple of decades now, but they have really not found anything since Michael Jordan that has rivaled that kind of market power. And that's become a real challenge for them.
That's
Pauline,
funny. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
when is the first time in your life where you realized that you had an affinity towards something luxury?
Well, I write about this in my book because the first thing I should say and answer your question, I wasn't born with it. And very few people are. I've met a few that I think are truly gifted, but most people, this is kind of like being a sommelier. It's an acquired skill.
Yep.
Nobody's born enjoying wine or any alcohol for that matter. So, but I think growing up in an affluent suburb of New York and being solidly middle class gave me an acute awareness of the power of brand, the power of style. My grandparents were all immigrants. They had fled the Nazis in the 1930s for various other parts of the world. I'm a first generation American. I think all of my life experiences have probably sensitized me to the power of design, of of emotional resonance, of symbols. And this idea of luxury is really, I mean, luxury means different things to different people. To some people, it's nothing short of Hermes or Loro Piana, and to other people, Starbucks is luxury, right? And I am not a snob about this. I think at every price point, people should still have the opportunity to satisfy their aspirations through good design, through good experience, and through good stories. But to answer your question, Bubba, I think it's been a long evolutionary process for me of just studying and realizing and making mistakes, seeing what's failed, trying to understand why things fail, and seeing which ones have lasted for the centuries, like a Dom Perignon, and why.
Pauline, I have a question that's off topic, and I'm not sure you'll want to talk about it.
I'll
But
talk about anything. It's okay.
I love it. Okay, let's talk about China.
Yeah.
Let's talk about replica.
Yeah.
Let's talk about I am astounded by what I see and the way I to me, I look at it and say they can't produce these on their own. They
Mm.
must just be factory overruns. And
Yeah.
I wonder, I mean, daily when I see DHK, and I see all these companies that thrive on just replicas. How do they
Yeah.
do that?
Well, first of all, if we just take China, which is, by far the best copycat in the world, they're very good. I look at brands that I know intimately, and I'm talking even watch brands that are quite hard with all those movements to do well. And unless I took the pieces apart, really very hard to tell the difference. So, but that's a mechanical challenge, right? And
Right.
with, AI and automation, we're going to see more and more of it. What the Chinese have not been trained to do, and I don't think in the foreseeable future they will, is how to think originally. And it's not that they're not born with creative minds. In fact, if you go back 5,000 years, there was very deep culture and creativity in China. It has been wiped out over close to a century during the Cultural Revolution. All of that was wiped out, and people were essentially robotized under Mao Zedong. And now I think there's still a bit of kind of PTSD from that era where they recognize good design, they study it closely, work hard to re-engineer it, but to really create value, to do more than just capitalize on value that someone like Bernard Arnault or some of his other counterparts in Europe or Elon Musk here in the US are doing. To really do more than that, you have to be an original thinker. You have to be inventive. You cannot data, mine your way into innovation. Most of the great breakthroughs, including if you look in biopharmaceutical, like Ozempic, was an accident of creation. It started as a medication for diabetes, and now it's turning into a revolutionary treatment for obesity and other related issues. My point being, it's a problem in the luxury industry that you have a large group of people that can replicate, but it is not a problem if you're a creator. It's only a problem if you're trying to coast on other creations.
Well, sustainability becomes the problem. Yeah, I mean, you
Yes,
can't
that is a
sustain.
problem. That
Yeah,
is a problem.
yeah, you
For
can't
sure.
sustain it. But so my question still is this:
Mm.
Are they manufacturing it, or is it coming out of the same factory?
So the short answer is I've never gone to one of those factories to tell you the answer with any sort of fact base. My gut is that they are manufacturing it, but they're able to source materials that otherwise would have gone to the original products. Maybe they can't source the alligator skin because there's only so much of that. Or if it's a watch movement, there's definitely a limited supply. But can they get some of the more mass manufactured elements that go into these pieces? Yeah. And are they taking some excess? Yeah. Do I think that the big companies like Christian Dior or Fendi or Celine are selling things through the back door? No, I don't think so. Not at the design level. There are suspicions that in certain segments like cosmetics, that there has been a big gray market, thanks in part to product dumping.
Right.
But I would say cosmetics, unlike, say, leather goods or watches, that is really a mass manufactured product. And so I do worry that in some segments, what you suspect could be the case. But I think in others, it would not be in the interest of those producers. They have a hard enough time being able to meet their own market demand.
Well, especially in this new administration, if that goes the way it's promised to.
This is true. This is true.
I mean, that could spell the demise of a lot of things, but it definitely exists, and I mean, I'm familiar with it. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah. Do you see it in your segment?
No. Well, I see that a 25% tariff would hurt us.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Pauline Brown,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us. If people would like to find out more information about you and your book and everything, where can they go?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So the book is called Aesthetic Intelligence. You can get it wherever books are sold, by Pauline Brown. And it covers some of the things we talked about today. And you can also go to aestheticintelligence.com just to learn a little bit more about some of the other things I'm involved in.
I would love to do that. Can we make sure that we exchange